Under Montana's boundless skies, Emma Caldwell, a veteran haunted by war, crosses paths with Atlas, a Mustang carrying secrets of his own. As they journey from quiet isolation toward Missoula's biggest horse showcase, will their quiet courage outshine wealth and arrogance? Sophie, Emma's niece, captures their bond through powerful sketches, but can art truly heal past scars? Together, can they overcome sabotage, reclaim their dignity, and transform pain into purpose? This is a story of redemption, resilience, and the unspoken power of trust beneath Montana's endless horizon. In Deer Creek, Montana, mornings came wrapped in a soft blanket of mist, settling low between the rugged peaks and pines like an old friend reluctant to leave. This day, however, brought a darker tone, a restless sky brooding with thick charcoal clouds ready to unleash their burden at any moment. On the outskirts of town, hidden behind sprawling acres of unkempt grass and leaning fences, stood the Caldwell Ranch. Once a proud, thriving homestead, it now bore the scars of neglect. Its barn, with walls peeling paint like old skin, tilted slightly, fighting a losing battle against time. Yet, despite its state, the ranch emanated an undeniable warmth, a quiet dignity woven into every rusted hinge and worn plank. Emma Caldwell emerged from the main house, a tall, lean figure moving with practiced grace. At 48, Emma's silhouette was strong but weary, carved by a life defined by resilience. Her chestnut hair, streaked liberally with silver, fell loosely past her shoulders, framing a face weathered by wind, sun, and sorrow. Bright blue eyes peered from beneath the brim of a faded Stetson hat, sharp, yet carrying a lingering sadness. Emma spoke sparingly, her words often deliberate and gentle, shaped by her years as a medic in the brutal sands of Iraq. Every morning, as habit dictated, Emma made her slow rounds around the ranch. She moved methodically, checking fences, distributing hay, and ensuring each animal was safe. Among her few charges were Old Bonnie, a gentle mare with cloudy eyes and patchy coat, and Rusty, a cantankerous gelding whose knees creaked louder each passing day. Each had been cast aside elsewhere, but here they found sanctuary. As she approached the stable, Emma heard a familiar voice call out, "Morning, Miss Caldwell." She turned to see her young neighbor, Toby Mills. At 16, Toby was thin and wiry, with sandy hair that fell haphazardly over curious brown eyes. His awkward gait hinted at limbs still growing faster than he could manage. Cheerful and eager to help, Toby often lent a hand at the ranch, drawn perhaps by sympathy for Emma's quiet loneliness. "Good morning, Toby," Emma replied softly, her voice tinged with appreciation. "What brings you here so early?" "Thought you could use some help today with the storm rolling in," Toby offered, eyes wide and sincere. Emma nodded gratefully. "That'd be nice. Let's hurry then. The horses will be restless." Together they worked efficiently in silence, placing hay in the stalls and shoring up sections of the fence that swayed precariously in the rising wind. By mid-morning, heavy raindrops began to pepper the dry earth, turning dust to mud, steadily gaining strength. Toby headed back home after helping secure the animals, leaving Emma alone again. Thunder rumbled distantly, triggering buried memories within her, echoes of a faraway battlefield, the crack of mortar shells, the cries of pain, and the oppressive silence afterward. Shaking herself free from the ghosts, she pulled her jacket tighter and surveyed the ranch once more. She noticed Sophie's bike leaning near the porch, wheels now wet and muddy from neglect. Emma's niece, Sophie, was 13 and had inherited her mother's artistic spirit. Petite and quiet, Sophie carried an air of maturity shaped by loss. Emma admired her niece's resilience, but worried about the emotional walls the girl built. Sophie was still asleep upstairs, likely lost in sketchbooks filled with the horses she loved and portraits of a mother now only captured in pencil and memory. The wind picked up, slicing sharply through Emma's jacket, tugging at her sleeves almost as if whispering a warning. Over the noise, a faint, desperate neigh drifted from somewhere beyond the ranch. It was a sound unmistakable in its distress, sharp and piercing through the storm. Emma's pulse quickened instinctively. She glanced toward the Bitterroot River, which lay about a quarter-mile beyond her land, hidden by a dense thicket of pine and spruce. Without hesitation, she headed toward the sound, trudging through increasingly muddy terrain. Rain fell in sheets, soaking Emma thoroughly within minutes. Her boots sank deeper into mud and wet grass as she pushed toward the riverbank. The cries became louder, a mixture of fear and pain, guiding her through tangled bushes and slick rocks until she reached the swollen river. And there he was, a Mustang, young and strong, yet clearly wounded and exhausted, sprawled awkwardly at the water's edge. His dark coat shimmered even in the gloom, muscles twitching in panic. One leg bore a deep gash, crimson blood mixing with the muddy water. Despite his weakened state, he held his head proudly, defiance gleaming in wild eyes. Emma approached cautiously, murmuring softly under her breath, "Easy now, easy." Her voice carried gentle authority. The horse struggled slightly, ears pinned back, wary but not aggressive. "That's right. I won't hurt you." Slowly she closed the gap, assessing the Mustang more closely. He was magnificent, sleek and powerful, even wounded. His eyes, deep pools of ebony, watched her warily but without hostility. Emma recognized in them something intimately familiar, a fierce desire to survive, a quiet resilience that resonated deeply within her own heart. Thunder cracked loudly overhead, startling both woman and horse. Atlas, the name formed spontaneously in her mind, tensed visibly but did not fight. It felt right, naming him after the Titan who carried the world upon his shoulders, somehow fitting for the burdens both horse and woman silently bore. Emma understood the difficulty ahead. Saving him meant facing emotional risks she'd avoided for years, and yet, as rain cascaded over them, Emma felt a powerful certainty rise within her. This animal deserved a chance, just as she herself had once needed one. She returned to the ranch quickly, securing ropes and an old tarp, determined to bring Atlas home. Hours later, as dusk fell, the storm finally relented, leaving a chill in its wake. With painstaking effort, Emma had managed to guide Atlas slowly and painstakingly into the barn, his weary frame shivering yet steady. She spent careful hours cleaning the Mustang's wound, applying antiseptic and bandages with practiced skill, hands steady from years of medical practice amidst chaos. Atlas, perhaps sensing her care, had stopped resisting, accepting her touch with quiet gratitude. Sophie appeared silently at the stable door, eyes wide with wonder. Emma nodded gently, permitting her closer. Sophie approached Atlas carefully, running her slender fingers gently along the horse's trembling flank. Emma watched her niece closely. A rare smile softened Sophie's reserved features, lighting up her youthful face like sunlight piercing through clouds. "He's beautiful," Sophie whispered reverently. "Yes, he is," Emma agreed softly, a warmth blooming within her heart. That night, after Sophie had gone to bed, Emma sat quietly by Atlas's stall, exhaustion tugging at her bones, yet peace flowed through her, soothing old wounds she thought would never heal. She whispered softly to the Mustang, "Welcome home, Atlas! We'll both find our strength again, together." Outside, under Montana's vast night sky now shimmering with emerging stars, the rain's aftermath brought a freshness to the ranch, washing away some of the lingering shadows. Though much work remained, for the first time in years, Emma felt something akin to hope stirring within her tired heart.
Days passed quietly, the storm retreating into memory. leaving Deer Creek refreshed and vibrant beneath Montana's expansive sky. Sunlight gently pierced through cotton-white clouds, casting an amber glow across the ranch, illuminating the worn planks of the barn and the fresh grass that now thrived vigorously. Inside the stable, Atlas's condition improved gradually, though his wounds still required vigilant care. Emma Caldwell spent hours each day meticulously changing bandages, softly whispering encouragements to the Mustang whose wary eyes slowly softened under her steady care. Emma's solitary routine was soon disrupted one crisp morning by the low rumble of a pickup truck pulling onto her gravel drive. Emerging cautiously, she observed the newcomer, a tall man stepping down from a battered white Ford. His frame was broad, defined by strength tempered by gentleness, hinting at a life accustomed to handling animals. Short, sandy blonde hair topped a face defined by thoughtful green eyes and a rugged jawline, partially concealed beneath a neatly trimmed beard. He wore a faded denim jacket over a plain white t-shirt and jeans, an understated appearance contrasting with his quiet confidence. He approached Emma with an easy stride, smiling warmly as he removed his worn baseball cap, revealing slightly tousled hair beneath. "Morning," he said warmly, extending a strong, calloused hand. "I'm Will Tucker, the new vet in Deer Creek. Heard from Toby Mills that you had a Mustang needing some attention." Emma hesitated briefly before shaking his hand, feeling the sincerity in his grasp. "Emma Caldwell," she replied simply, meeting his gaze evenly. "The Mustang's inside." Following Emma's quiet lead, Will stepped into the stable, his eyes briefly scanning the interior with professional curiosity before focusing intently on Atlas. His demeanor immediately shifted, becoming gentle yet authoritative as he approached the horse. Emma watched him carefully, noticing his practiced movements, the respectful caution with which he touched Atlas's flank, murmuring softly in soothing tones that quickly earned the animal's trust. As Will examined the wound, carefully lifting and replacing bandages, he nodded approvingly. "You did impressive work here, Miss Caldwell," he said earnestly. "You obviously know your way around injuries." Emma's expression softened slightly, a faint smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "I used to be a medic overseas," she admitted quietly, eyes momentarily distant. Will paused momentarily, studying Emma with a sudden, thoughtful intensity. "You serve in Iraq?" he asked cautiously, a flicker of recognition in his voice. Emma looked up sharply, surprised. "Yes. What?" Will cleared his throat gently, eyes respectful yet hesitant. "My father, Frank Tucker, served there too. Marines. His unit got caught in a roadside ambush near Fallujah. He always talked about the medic who saved his life, Doc Caldwell. Said she was the bravest person he'd ever met." Emma felt a sudden tightness in her chest, memories flooding back vividly. The heat, the noise, the fear, yet the unwavering duty guiding her through chaos. "Frank Tucker," she murmured slowly, the name tugging at a long-forgotten thread. A faint smile appeared, bittersweet yet genuine. "Good man. Stubborn as hell, but brave." Will chuckled softly, nodding appreciatively. "That's Dad, all right." An easy silence settled between them, comfortably bridging past and present, their shared history creating an invisible bond. Will cleared his throat again, smiling kindly. "I'm glad we finally met, Emma. It means a lot to finally thank you." Emma nodded gently, her guard lowering slightly. "You're welcome, Will," she replied sincerely, feeling an unexpected comfort in his presence. While Emma and Will continued discussing Atlas's recovery, Sophie appeared silently in the barn doorway, clutching her sketchbook. The shy girl glanced hesitantly toward the newcomer. Sophie, small and slender, had inherited her mother's delicate features and intense blue eyes. Her dark auburn hair fell softly around her face, often hiding her emotions. She was observant, thoughtful, and reserved, having retreated into herself following her mother's sudden death. Art had become her refuge, her sketches windows into her guarded soul. "Sophie," Emma beckoned gently, introducing her niece to Will. Sophie nodded quietly, holding her sketchbook tighter against her chest. Mind if I see your drawings? Will asked gently, sensing the girl's shyness and hoping to ease the awkwardness. Surprised yet intrigued, Sophie hesitantly handed over her book. Will flipped carefully through pages filled with graceful pencil strokes capturing landscapes, horses, and increasingly, Atlas. He paused thoughtfully at an especially striking drawing of Atlas gazing solemnly through stable bars, capturing the Mustang's profound resilience and quiet dignity. These are beautiful, Sophie. Will praised earnestly. You have real talent. Sophie's face flushed slightly, her eyes brightening with cautious pride. Thank you, she whispered softly, her voice barely audible. In the days following Will's visit, Sophie's artwork evolved rapidly. Atlas became her primary muse, appearing frequently on the pages of her sketchbooks. She depicted him with care and precision, each stroke imbued with emotion that gradually eased her grief. Emma noticed the change, observing Sophie grow more expressive, even cheerful at times, her sketches slowly replacing the shadows of loss. Meanwhile, Will's presence became increasingly frequent, the veterinarian stopping by often to monitor Atlas's progress, always careful to respect Emma's quiet reserve. His gentle manner, combined with genuine admiration for Emma's strength, began to subtly thaw her carefully maintained emotional barriers. Though neither spoke openly of their mutual connection through war, it quietly strengthened the bond forming between them. One afternoon, while Emma was reinforcing fences damaged by recent winds, Will returned unannounced, this time accompanied by a small terrier bounding energetically at his heels. The dog was compact, scrappy, with wiry tan and white fur and intelligent brown eyes constantly darting about curiously. His stubby tail wagged furiously, conveying infectious enthusiasm. This is Chester, Will introduced with a laugh, scooping the dog affectionately into his arms. He insisted on coming today. Emma raised an amused eyebrow, warmth flickering briefly in her eyes. Cute dog. Friendly. Too friendly sometimes, Will admitted fondly, setting Chester down again. The terrier immediately trotted towards Sophie, who had come to investigate the commotion. Sophie kneeled hesitantly, giggling softly when Chester eagerly sniffed her hands and offered affectionate licks. Within minutes, Chester had won her cautious heart, and Sophie was smiling freely, a sight Emma treasured deeply. Emma and Will worked side by side in comfortable silence, repairing fences under the gentle afternoon sun. Watching Sophie laughing softly as she sketched Chester's playful antics nearby, Emma felt something loosen inside her, a guarded part of her heart cautiously opening to the possibilities of companionship and healing. As dusk approached, Will prepared to leave, Chester now sprawled sleepily at Sophie's feet. Emma walked Will to his truck, feeling uncharacteristically reluctant to see him go. Atlas is doing great, Will reassured her gently. You've done amazing work. Emma smiled faintly, brushing stray hair from her face. I had good help, she admitted softly, sincerity evident in her tone. Will hesitated briefly, a slight flush coloring his face. Emma, my dad would be proud to see who I found here. He always believed you deserve happiness after everything you sacrificed. Emma's eyes glistened slightly, touched by his words. Thank you, Will, she replied quietly, her voice thick with emotion. As the truck's headlights disappeared into the Montana twilight, Emma stood thoughtfully, aware that something significant had quietly shifted within her heart. Turning toward the ranch, seeing Sophie laughing softly and Atlas grazing peacefully, Emma realized with gentle astonishment that healing, once so distant, had quietly begun. Autumn arrived gently in Deer Creek, Montana, painting the trees with strokes of gold and auburn, softening the landscape into a tapestry of warmth and change. The ranch breathed easier under these days, the crisp air rejuvenating even as the nights grew cooler. Emma Caldwell watched quietly from her porch, savoring the brief peace that had settled around her small world. Atlas was thriving, his coat now glossy, muscles rippling beneath healed skin, a proud symbol of patience and compassion. Sophie, too, had blossomed. The shy girl once burdened by grief, now spending hours sketching Atlas and Chester under the amber sunlight. But peace in Deer Creek rarely stayed undisturbed for long. One clear afternoon, the roar of an expensive engine shattered the ranch's tranquility. Emma's gaze hardened as a polished, black SUV rolled confidently down her gravel driveway, sending a cloud of dust rising defiantly behind it. The vehicle halted sharply in front of her, the driver stepping out with deliberate arrogance. Gideon Blake was a man of presence, standing well over 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered, immaculately dressed in a tailored jacket and designer jeans. His thick, jet-black hair was carefully styled, accentuating a striking yet severe face marked by sharp cheekbones and piercing dark eyes. Blake owned Golden Pines, a prestigious ranch near Missoula known throughout Montana for its wealth, status, and prize-winning horses. Gideon carried himself with an air of entitlement and pride that could charm the wealthy elite or intimidate those he deemed beneath him. "Miss Caldwell," Gideon began, his voice smooth but dripping condescension. "Lovely little ranch you have here. Quaint, in its own rustic way." Emma bristled slightly, but remained composed, meeting his gaze calmly. "What brings you out here, Gideon?" A cool smile touched his lips. "I'm here with an invitation. Golden Pines sponsors the annual Missoula Horse Showcase, as I'm sure you're aware. We're opening a slot for local ranches thought it might be amusing." His eyes flickered dismissively toward Atlas grazing in the paddock, to include some real Montana grit. Emma's jaw tightened subtly. Gideon had always reveled in flaunting his wealth, subtly mocking anyone who didn't match his standards. She understood immediately that this invitation was meant to humiliate more than honor. "I appreciate the gesture," she replied coolly, voice deliberately even, "but I have no interest in your showcase." Gideon raised an eyebrow slightly, feigning surprise. "Are you certain? It could bring attention to your modest establishment. You could certainly use it." Before Emma could respond, Sophie appeared quietly at her side, eyes narrowing protectively as she sized up the arrogant visitor. "Atlas is just as good as any of your horses," she said softly but defiantly, surprising Emma with her sudden confidence. "Probably better." Gideon's expression shifted to amused condescension. "Is that right, young lady?" He chuckled dismissively. "Well, perhaps you should convince your aunt here. I'd hate for her to miss such an opportunity." Without waiting for a response, he turned sharply, climbing back into his sleek SUV and vanishing swiftly down the road, leaving behind a lingering tension. Later that evening, Sophie approached Emma quietly, her eyes filled with earnest determination. "We have to do it, Aunt Emma," she said firmly. "We have to show Gideon Blake he's wrong about Atlas." Emma sighed deeply, understanding the fire behind Sophie's words, but hesitant to subject themselves to public ridicule. "Sophie, I admire your courage, but Gideon's just trying to embarrass us." Sophie shook her head insistently. "Atlas deserves a chance to prove himself," she pleaded softly. "And so do we." The sincerity in Sophie's voice pierced Emma's guarded heart. Emma knew better than anyone the strength of quiet determination, how a small act of courage could alter the course of a life. Watching Sophie's eyes, blazing with the determination Emma herself once held, she felt her resistance begin to crumble. Perhaps it was time, she considered reluctantly, to step beyond her cautious solitude and confront old wounds. In the days following Gideon's visit, Emma's ranch buzzed with quiet activity. Word had quickly spread around Deer Creek that the Caldwell Ranch was considering entering the Missoula Showcase. Emma endured subtle looks of skepticism whenever she ventured into town, quiet murmurs behind her back. However, unexpected support came from Sarah Barnes, Deer Creek's local store owner. Sarah was a woman in her late 50s, slender and wiry, with a sharp wit that often surprised strangers. Her salt and pepper hair was cut short, framing a face etched with laugh lines and quiet strength born from raising 3 boys alone. She had always respected Emma's independence, silently offering friendship through small gestures and occasional quiet conversations. "You should do it, Emma," Sarah encouraged warmly, her voice firm as she handed Emma bags of feed one afternoon. Folks around here respect grit over glamour. Atlas might surprise everyone. Emma smiled faintly, grateful for Sarah's steady encouragement. The older woman's support provided unexpected reassurance, giving Emma a sense that perhaps she wasn't alone in facing Gideon's calculated challenge. Meanwhile, Sophie poured herself into new sketches inspired by the upcoming showcase. Her work evolved dramatically. Atlas no longer just quiet and reflective, but captured mid-motion, muscles tensed and proud, mane flying defiantly. Her art expressed fierce confidence and unwavering belief, traits she had silently cultivated over months of quiet healing. Sophie's newfound confidence also attracted the attention of a new friend, Olivia Hart, a 14-year-old neighbor recently moved from Idaho. Olivia was bright-eyed and energetic, her coppery curls framing a cheerful face. She admired Sophie's art openly, their friendship blossoming quickly over shared passions. Olivia's outgoing personality coaxed Sophie further out of her shell, the girls spending long afternoons together at the ranch, laughing quietly as they imagined Atlas's victorious debut. One evening, Emma stood quietly in the stable, brushing Atlas's gleaming coat, her mind still conflicted about the upcoming showcase. The peaceful rhythm of brush strokes was interrupted by familiar footsteps. Turning slightly, she found Will leaning casually against the stall doorway, his face gentle and supportive beneath the fading sunlight. "Heard about Gideon's challenge," Will said softly, observing her closely. "What are you thinking?" Emma exhaled slowly, her hand pausing on Atlas's flank. "I'm still not sure," she admitted quietly. "Part of me wants to show him how wrong he is, but another part worries." Will approached gently, understanding reflected clearly in his eyes. "Emma, sometimes proving yourself isn't about changing other people's minds," he said sincerely. "It's about remembering who you are, your strength, your heart." Emma's gaze softened as she met Will's steady eyes, feeling her doubts slowly retreat. He understood her quietly yet profoundly, a reassuring presence steadily anchoring her against lingering fears. "I guess you're right," she whispered softly. "Atlas deserves this, and maybe we do too." He smiled warmly, gently touching her shoulder. "I'll be there for you, whatever happens." Emma nodded gratefully, his words strengthening her resolve. She knew now, with quiet certainty, that accepting Gideon's challenge wasn't about pride or anger. It was about honoring the courage she'd fought for in herself and now saw clearly in Sophie. It was about confronting old ghosts, embracing risks, and reclaiming their place beneath Montana's vast, indifferent sky. Emma found Sophie later, sketching quietly on the porch. She sat beside her niece, voice gentle yet firm. "Sophie, you're right. We'll enter Atlas in the showcase." Sophie's eyes lit up brightly, joy and determination shining clearly. "We'll show everyone, Aunt Emma," she said confidently. "Atlas is going to surprise them all." Emma smiled softly, feeling the weight of the decision settle peacefully around her. They would face the challenge together, united by quiet resilience, ready to prove that sometimes true strength shines brightest beneath the humblest exterior. The early Montana winter arrived abruptly, blanketing Deer Creek in thick layers of fresh snow, smothering fields and roads in pristine white silence. Emma Caldwell watched anxiously through her kitchen window as large flakes tumbled relentlessly from a steel-gray sky, each flake settling heavily on fences, trees, and the rusted frame of her old pickup truck. She knew the journey to Missoula would be challenging in such weather, yet turning back wasn't an option. Not now, not after seeing the determination in Sophie's hopeful eyes. They left early the next morning, the dawn sky still dark and oppressive, the roads hidden beneath a heavy white shroud. Emma's truck, a faded red Chevrolet nearly 2 decades old, coughed stubbornly but eventually roared to life, reluctantly carrying them toward Missoula. In the trailer behind them, Atlas stood patiently, nostrils flaring slightly, sensing the unusual tension of their journey. Emma gripped the steering wheel, hands tight and cautious. Beside her, Sophie sat quietly sketching, her slender fingers deftly capturing the solemn, snowy landscape racing past their windows. Chester, Will's small terrier, had insisted on joining them, now curled contentedly between them on the seat, occasionally stretching his paws and letting out sleepy sighs. Midway through their journey, as snowflakes thickened into an unforgiving blizzard, the Chevy began to sputter ominously. Emma's pulse quickened anxiously, her eyes narrowing in concern. Soon, with an unsettling jolt, the engine faltered completely, leaving them stranded on a lonely stretch of highway surrounded by dense, snow-laden pines. Emma tried several times to restart the engine, frustration mounting with each failed attempt. "Stay calm, Sophie," she reassured softly, masking her growing worry. Chester whined anxiously, sensing trouble. As the snow piled higher around them, the silence was suddenly broken by approaching headlights piercing the dense snowfall. Relief flooded through Emma as she recognized Will Tucker's familiar white Ford pickup easing to a halt beside them. Will emerged quickly, bundled warmly in a heavy winter coat, his expression calm and reassuring despite the biting cold. "You two okay?" he called urgently, breath misting heavily in the frigid air. Emma nodded gratefully, her voice steady despite exhaustion. "Truck's dead. Atlas needs shelter." Without hesitation, Will directed them to a small hunting cabin he knew nearby, nestled safely within the surrounding forest. Emma and Sophie quickly guided Atlas from his trailer, carefully leading the anxious Mustang through deep snowdrifts toward the small cabin. It was modest but sturdy, constructed of thick timber logs, its porch buried beneath powdery snow. Inside, the cabin was warm and welcoming, the air tinged with the comforting aroma of pine logs crackling gently in a stone fireplace. Will worked swiftly, ensuring Atlas was comfortable and sheltered in the adjoining stable before returning indoors, stamping snow from his boots. Sophie quietly sat near a window, sketchbook open, eyes focused intently on Atlas through the frosted glass. Emma watched silently, struck by Sophie's quiet resilience. As her pencil danced over the page, Sophie depicted Atlas defiantly facing the storm outside, his mane whipping wildly in the fierce wind, eyes burning brightly with courage and determination. Moved by her niece's quiet bravery, Emma joined Will near the fire, sitting slowly beside him. The flickering glow softened their tired faces, casting gentle shadows around the quiet room. Chester curled protectively at Emma's feet, his gentle presence soothing her anxious heart. For a moment, neither spoke, absorbing the peace despite the storm raging beyond the walls. Will broke the silence first, his voice quiet and thoughtful. "You're always so strong, Emma, always protecting everyone else." Emma sighed gently, her gaze distant. "Sometimes strength feels more like hiding," she confessed softly. She hesitated, uncertainty flickering briefly, but Will's patient silence gave her courage to continue. "The war stays with me. Sometimes it feels like I left part of myself over there." Will listened intently, his eyes warm with understanding. Encouraged by his silent empathy, Emma shared memories she had never spoken aloud before. The stifling heat of Iraqi summers, frantic moments of saving lives amidst chaos, and the haunting faces of soldiers she couldn't save. As she spoke, tears welled silently in her eyes, carrying years of silent burdens finally released into gentle acceptance. Will reached out slowly, placing a comforting hand gently over hers. "My father always spoke of your courage. But bravery doesn't mean not hurting," he whispered softly. "It means facing the hurt and still moving forward. You've done that every day." Emma nodded gently, her heart easing slowly beneath the weight of shared understanding. In Will's quiet support, she felt herself truly understood, her hidden scars no longer burdens to be carried alone. Meanwhile, Sophie had finished her drawing, quietly taking a photo of her work illuminated by the soft cabin lighting. Hesitantly, she shared it to social media, her caption brief yet powerful: "Courage is facing the storm." Within minutes, likes and comments began flooding in, Friends and strangers alike, moved by the raw beauty and emotional power captured her sketch. The unexpected outpouring of support brought a shy smile to Sophie's face, giving her confidence she had rarely felt before. Olivia Hart immediately texted her, excitedly praising Sophie's artwork, encouraging her to continue sharing her unique talent. The storm finally eased in the early hours of morning, revealing a landscape transformed, breathtakingly pristine beneath shimmering sunlight. Will led them safely onward to Missoula, the city bustling brightly in the aftermath of the storm, streets now cleared of snow, its welcoming energy promising new beginnings. Emma's pickup was towed safely to a local garage managed by Jerry Atkins, an elderly mechanic with a kind face line from decades spent beneath car hoods. Jerry was short, stocky, and possessed an endless patience hidden beneath his gruff exterior. His eyes twinkled kindly as he reassured Emma he'd have her truck running again soon, his calm demeanor comforting amidst lingering anxiety. Settled comfortably at a small and recommended by Will, Emma and Sophie took moments to relax, gently preparing themselves mentally for the showcase. Emma watched Sophie closely, noticing a quiet confidence settling comfortably around her niece. Sophie's unexpected social media success had given her courage, quietly reshaping her self-perception into one of strength and resilience. That evening, Emma stood alone on the inn's balcony, gazing thoughtfully at Missoula's twinkling lights stretched out beneath a vast, star-studded sky. Will joined her quietly, his presence familiar and comforting in the cool night air. "You're ready for this, Emma," he assured her softly, sensing her lingering anxiety. Emma smiled gently, feeling genuine strength rooted deep within her heart. "I think maybe I finally am," she admitted quietly. She glanced warmly toward Will, gratitude filling her eyes. "Thank you for everything, Will." He nodded gently, stepping closer. "You've never needed saving," he whispered softly. "You just needed someone who understands." Beneath the peaceful stars, with Missoula alive beneath them, Emma felt peace settle gently within her heart. She knew tomorrow's challenge awaited, Gideon Blake's arrogance still looming ahead. But now, she faced it differently, with quiet courage strengthened by Sophie's faith, Will's quiet support, and Atlas's steadfast spirit that had carried them safely through the storm. Missoula welcomed Emma, Sophie, and Atlas with brisk air and bustling activity, its streets lively with visitors eagerly awaiting the annual horse showcase. The city, nestled serenely at the base of towering mountains, buzzed with excitement beneath clear skies after the fierce storm had retreated. The venue was a vast complex filled with immaculate stables and grand arenas, each corner polished meticulously to welcome Montana's elite ranches. Emma carefully led Atlas into their assigned stall, gently murmuring words of reassurance as he nervously flicked his ears, absorbing the unfamiliar surroundings. Nearby, Sophie set up their modest area, neatly hanging sketches of Atlas, including the drawing that had gained so much attention online. Passers-by slowed to admire her artwork, occasionally nodding appreciatively or whispering words of encouragement, which filled Sophie with quiet pride. Across the stabling area, Gideon Blake's opulent presence loomed unmistakably. Surrounded by a cluster of well-groomed attendants and expensive horses, he watched Emma's humble preparations with disdainful amusement, eyes narrowing with concealed irritation at the unexpected attention the Mustang and his owners had received. Determined to secure his own prestige, Gideon had quietly arranged a plan to undermine Atlas's confidence and disrupt Emma's chances. That evening, as the venue emptied, leaving only a few sleepy guards patrolling lazily, Gideon's hired accomplice slipped silently through shadows. Jake Conway, a wiry man in his mid-30s, known locally as a troublemaker for hire, possessed a thin, angular face marked by pale, calculating eyes and a perpetual sneer. Jake moved swiftly, carrying concealed devices designed to emit sharp, disruptive noises that would unsettle even the calmest horse. Unbeknownst to Jake, however, Will Tucker had returned quietly to check on Atlas, driven by an instinctive unease. Will paused suddenly, eyes narrowing suspiciously as he noticed Jake's furtive movements near Atlas's stall. Approaching silently, Will recognized immediately the malicious intent behind Jake's actions. "Hey!" Will's voice boomed, startling Jake sharply. Jake spun around, his expression quickly shifting from surprise to aggression. Without hesitation, Will confronted him firmly, blocking Jake's path. "I suggest you leave now, before I call security," Will warned coldly, his tone leaving no doubt about his seriousness. Jake hesitated briefly, eyes flickering uncertainly before scurrying away swiftly into the night. Will sighed deeply, relieved yet troubled by the confrontation, realizing clearly now the lengths Gideon Blake was willing to go. Early the next morning, unaware of the previous night's incident, Emma arrived at the arena alone to care for Atlas. Lost in thought, she nearly collided with an elderly man carefully carrying a bucket of feed. Tom Foster, in his early 70s, stood slightly stooped but maintained a quiet dignity. His short, neatly combed gray hair framed wise, gentle blue eyes beneath bushy white eyebrows. He wore faded denim and a worn brown jacket bearing patches from decades spent in horse training. "I'm terribly sorry," Emma apologized quickly, her cheeks flushed. Tom smiled gently, eyes twinkling warmly. "No harm done, miss. Name's Tom Foster. I couldn't help but notice your Mustang yesterday. Reminds me strongly of a mare I once knew well. Her name was Luna." Emma's curiosity piqued instantly. "Luna," she echoed softly, her eyes widening slightly. Tom nodded fondly, his gaze becoming distant and reflective. "Yes, Luna was a remarkable Mustang. Strong-willed, loyal, fiercely intelligent. I trained her myself nearly 15 years ago, but she mysteriously vanished one stormy night, never to be found." Emma listened quietly, her pulse quickening with realization. "Do you think Atlas might be related?" Tom studied her closely, thoughtful recognition dawning gently in his expression. His markings, his eyes, even the proud way he carries himself. "I'd say without a doubt, he's Luna's foal." Emma stood quietly stunned, understanding the significance deeply. Tom noticed her reaction, gently placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Atlas carries Luna's legacy of courage and loyalty. Those are traits that cannot be trained. They're inherited and nurtured through trust and respect. Luna trusted me completely, just as Atlas clearly trusts you." Emma's heart filled with warmth and newfound clarity, appreciating Atlas even more deeply than before. Tom's revelation strengthened her resolve. Atlas was not simply a rescued Mustang. He embodied a rare and treasured lineage, a heritage Emma now felt profoundly honored to protect. Later that afternoon, Sophie carefully sketched Atlas in the warm sunlight, filtering gently through the stable windows, her attention briefly distracted by a quiet cough behind her. Turning, she found young Emily Foster, Tom's granddaughter, shyly watching her work. Emily was a slight girl of 13, her delicate face framed by strawberry blonde hair and dotted with freckles. Quiet and reserved, Emily's gentle manner mirrored Sophie's own shyness, instantly drawing them together. I love your drawings," Emily admitted softly, her voice barely audible. Sophie smiled warmly, inviting Emily closer. "Would you like to try?" she offered kindly, handing her a spare pencil and a fresh page. Emily hesitated briefly before nodding shyly, sitting carefully beside Sophie. As they sketched quietly together, Sophie gently encouraged Emily, offering small tips that bolstered Emily's fragile confidence. Their friendship blossomed quickly, quietly deepening the sense of belonging each girl had silently longed for. Meanwhile, across the arena, Gideon Blake watched Emma intently, growing increasingly frustrated by her quiet resilience and the steady admiration Atlas continued to garner. Determined to assert dominance, Gideon approached Emma, his tone feigned politeness masking simmering contempt. "Ready for tomorrow, Miss Caldwell?" Gideon asked coolly, his eyes glittering dangerously. Emma met his gaze evenly, confidence unwavering. "Alice and I are ready. Are you?" Gideon's jaw tightened subtly, betraying his annoyance. "We'll see how your wild Mustang fares against true champions," he remarked dismissively, retreating swiftly without waiting for her response. Will, noticing the tense interaction, approached Emma reassuringly. He briefly explained the previous night's incident, anger evident beneath his controlled demeanor. Emma's expression darkened slightly with understanding, grateful yet troubled by Will's revelation. "He's desperate," Emma murmured quietly, feeling Will's steady support grounding her determination. "Atlas deserves better than his games." Will nodded gently, his voice steady and reassuring. "Atlas will show everyone exactly who he is tomorrow. Trust yourself, Emma. Trust Atlas." Emma exhaled softly, reassured deeply by Will's quiet confidence. Glancing towards Sophie happily sketching with Emily, Emma realized how deeply their lives had been transformed by the Mustang's unexpected arrival. Atlas had quietly taught them courage, trust, and the importance of standing tall against adversity. As twilight painted Missoula in soft hues of amber and violet, Emma stood beside Atlas's stall, gently stroking his neck as he calmly nuzzled her hand. "Tomorrow is our day, Atlas," she whispered firmly, feeling the Mustang's quiet strength mirrored in her own heart. Emma's gaze met Tom Foster's as the old trainer quietly passed, sharing a respectful nod filled with mutual understanding. Atlas's heritage was no longer a secret burden, but a powerful inspiration, a legacy of loyalty and bravery Emma was proud to honor. Tomorrow, she knew, Atlas would not merely compete. He would carry forward Luna's proud lineage, defying Gideon Blake's arrogance, proving that true strength lay not in wealth or status, but in quiet courage and steadfast hearts. Emma smiled gently, ready to face whatever challenges awaited them together, comforted deeply by the unwavering trust and quiet strength of those she had come to cherish. The morning of the competition broke crisp and clear over Missoula, a perfect blue sky stretching endlessly over snow-capped peaks, painting the landscape in shades of pure serenity. A quiet sense of anticipation hung in the air as crowds gathered at the arena, murmurs blending into a steady hum of excitement. The showcase was a spectacle of wealth and prestige, evident in the parade of immaculate trailers and shimmering thoroughbreds whose groomed coats caught the sunlight like polished bronze. Amid this grandeur, Emma Caldwell walked calmly alongside Atlas, their quiet humility a striking contrast to Gideon Blake's glittering entourage. Gideon stood confidently near his champion stallion, a sleek ebony thoroughbred named Midnight Pride, its glossy coat glistening impeccably. He cast an arrogant glance toward Emma, his disdain clear yet tempered by curiosity. The whispers surrounding Emma's humble Mustang had grown louder in recent days, unsettling Gideon's carefully constructed image of invincibility. As Emma quietly groomed Atlas one final time, Will Tucker approached gently, his presence a familiar comfort. "Are you ready?" he asked softly, eyes reassuring beneath his worn baseball cap. Emma nodded confidently, gently stroking Atlas's muscular neck. "We're ready, no matter what happens. Atlas has already proven himself to me." Nearby, Sophie carefully arranged her sketches, the beautiful collection she titled Atlas and the Montana Skies, showcasing each moment of quiet courage and profound connection between horse and rider. Olivia Hart had eagerly volunteered to help, her cheerful face bright beneath unruly copper curls, warmly greeting curious spectators drawn by Sophie's artwork. The competition began with polished routines, each rider demonstrating skillful precision, yet often lacking genuine emotion. Gideon's performance with Midnight Pride was flawless, each move meticulously choreographed, yet emotionally sterile. Still, applause erupted warmly as Gideon bowed theatrically, basking in the glory he craved. Finally, it was Emma's turn. She entered the arena calmly beside Atlas, a quiet, steady presence that immediately captured the audience's attention. Atlas's gray coat, gleaming healthily beneath the sun, reflected quiet strength and noble humility. Together, horse and rider embodied trust and authenticity, instantly shifting the atmosphere into quiet reverence. Before mounting, Emma paused, a gentle smile forming on her lips as she whispered softly into Atlas's ear, the Mustang responding with a quiet nuzzle. Then, to the surprise of the judges and audience, she removed Atlas's bridle completely, trusting him to follow her cues entirely through subtle body language and shared understanding. A soft collective gasp rippled through the spectators as the full significance of her decision sank in. The arena fell silent, awed anticipation thickening the air as Emma mounted gracefully. With a barely visible shift in posture, Atlas moved effortlessly, fluidly transitioning through complex maneuvers, side passes, spins, and elegant controlled trots. Every step resonated powerfully, showcasing the invisible bond forged deeply between human and horse. Watching quietly from the sidelines was Hank Duval, a retired judge in his early 80s known for his tough but fair evaluations. A tall, thin man with wispy white hair and deep-set eyes that had witnessed countless performances, Hank was rarely moved. Yet as he observed Emma and Atlas, his normally stoic expression softened noticeably, deeply touched by the raw sincerity unfolding before him. Beside him, Tom Foster watched silently, pride shimmering quietly in his aged eyes as Atlas moved gracefully, clearly honoring Luna's proud lineage. He gently whispered to Emily, his granddaughter standing awestruck at his side, "That's true horsemanship, Em, when a horse chooses to follow because it trusts." Meanwhile, Sophie quietly captured the powerful scene unfolding before her in rapid sketches, her hand trembling slightly with emotion. Olivia whispered encouragement beside her, eyes shining brightly as Emma and Atlas completed their performance with a seamless transition into a graceful levade, Atlas rising powerfully onto his hind legs, holding perfect balance in a stunning display of trust. The audience erupted instantly into thunderous applause, cheering and whistling reverberating through the arena. Gideon stood motionless, stunned disbelief etched clearly on his face, finally realizing the depth of what Emma had quietly demonstrated. Strength born not from wealth or superiority, but from genuine trust, humility, and courage. When the results were announced, Atlas and Emma were declared winners by unanimous decision, their performance undeniably powerful. Gideon graciously conceded, shaken but acknowledging quietly the profound lesson in humility he had just received. In the aftermath, Sophie released her art collection online, Atlas in the Montana Skies, swiftly capturing hearts worldwide. The powerful images depicting trust, courage, and the beauty of Montana resonated deeply, attracting significant attention and generous sales. The newfound financial stability allowed Emma to slowly restore her beloved ranch, turning it into a vibrant, welcoming refuge for both horses and humans. Inspired by their shared experiences, Emma and Will embarked on a quiet but ambitious project, transforming the ranch into a therapy center specifically dedicated to veterans coping with PTSD. Will's quiet compassion and Emma's personal understanding perfectly complemented their shared vision. They named the center Atlas Haven, honoring the brave Mustang whose courage had quietly transformed so many lives. The opening ceremony drew quiet acclaim, Deer Creek residents proudly supporting the meaningful new venture. Among the guests was Sarah Barnes, the lean, sharp-witted store owner from town. Sarah had always admired Emma's quiet resilience, often helping discreetly whenever needed. Now, witnessing Emma's new purpose blossom, Sarah's normally composed demeanor softened noticeably, tears quietly shimmering beneath her short salt and pepper hair. As time passed, Atlas Haven thrived quietly, drawing veterans from across Montana, each finding gentle healing through their connections with rescued horses. Emma guided them patiently, teaching trust and patience through quiet horsemanship, demonstrating firsthand how the courage to face old wounds could quietly restore lost hope. Sophie continued refining her art, her reputation growing steadily. Emily Foster became a frequent visitor, their friendship blossoming warmly. Together, they created art that deeply inspired those who visited Atlas Haven, quietly reinforcing its mission of hope and healing. One evening, Emma stood quietly beside Atlas, watching a soft sunset casting golden hues over Montana's peaceful landscape. Will approached gently, slipping his arm around her waist, their quiet companionship solidified over shared challenges and dreams. Chester trotted happily beside them, his small, scruffy form still tirelessly curious and affectionate, embodying the quiet joy that now permeated their lives. Emma leaned gently into Will's comforting embrace, sighing deeply in quiet contentment. "Alice gave us all a second chance," she whispered softly, voice filled with deep gratitude. Will nodded warmly, gazing out at the peaceful pastures now filled with rescued horses and hopeful veterans quietly discovering peace. "He showed us courage comes from facing fears, not from hiding them," Will replied softly, gently squeezing her hand. Emma smiled warmly, knowing deeply she had finally found the peace she had quietly sought for so long, rooted in trust, courage, and love. Beneath the endless Montana skies, the quiet legacy of Emma Caldwell and her brave Mustang became a cherished local legend, quietly inspiring others to find strength in compassion, humility, and quiet bravery. Atlas Haven stood proudly as a living testament to the invisible power connecting hearts, proving that sometimes the quietest strength can transform lives most profoundly. The greatest strength often lies not in wealth or pride, but in the humble bonds of trust, courage, and compassion. Emma and Atlas remind us that no matter how deep our scars, healing is always possible through genuine connection and quiet bravery. In our own daily lives, let's strive to build bridges of kindness and support, lifting each other through life's storms. If this story touched your heart, please share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Type Amen if you believe in the quiet power of redemption and hope. Don't forget to subscribe and share our channel with those you love. May God bless each of you on your journey. Amen.